Welcome inside Gillette Stadium, everybody. My name is Mike Petraglia, joined as always by Patriots expert columnist for WEEI.com, Christopher Price. A little bit questionable on the injury report, battling an illness, but we appreciate you, as always, gutting it out and making it out here on the field to preview what should be, I think, one of the tougher games the Patriots are going to face early on in this season. They're 5-0, but they face a 4-1 team. Chris, and head coach Todd Bowles in his first year in the Big Apple really has got that New York team believing in its defense and its run game.
The defensively, what they do on the defensive side of the ball is very, very impressive from top to bottom. Last year we saw a really good front seven. Obviously the secondary is questionable. Now they have all 11 guys clearly on the same page. The big thing to look out for this week defensively, they force turnovers almost better than almost anyone across the National Football League. Right. Bill talked about it during his press conference today. They are, I believe they're in the neighborhood of +5 right now.
+5 is correct, and the Patriots are +4.
Exactly, and that includes 15 takeaways, which is very, very impressive. It's not only the takeaways that are impressive, but their ability to turn those takeaways into points. That's certainly going to be a point of emphasis this week. It's a point of emphasis every week, taking care of the football, but even more so now when you're going up against a team like the Jets that's shown an ability to take advantage of that kind of stuff.
Darrelle Revis, how has he reshaped that secondary? Tom Brady told me when I asked him today about how Darrelle Revis has reshaped the secondary. He said, well, it makes them have the ability to really put pressure on from any part of their defensive backfield.
They were not able to get consistent play out of their cornerback position last year. They were able to get good play out of the front seven, and they were able to get good consistent pressure on the signal callers. Mm-hmm. But I think now what you're looking at with this Jets defense is they could get a little creative, and they could scheme some things up, things that we couldn't necessarily see last year. Now they're able to do a few more things. When you get a guy like Revis on the field, you get a guy like Screen there as well. You have some options when it comes to defending the pass that you didn't have last year. You have a little bit more defensive flexibility.
Having faced him for just one season in training camp and in practice during the regular season last year, do you think that's a big deal to Tom Brady? Did he glean anything? Did he take anything from that he might be able to use in 2 encounters this season starting Sunday at Gillette?
We talked a little bit about this in the podcast. I thought it was fascinating last year during training camp to watch Brady, Revis, and Gronkowski all kind of mix it up off to the side when they would have these side sessions. I think that they were able to glean certain things from each other's performance. Gronk was able to pick up a few things from Revis. Brady was able to pick up some things from Revis. Revis was able to pick up some things from the other two guys. But at the same time, I don't think that they showed all their cards. Great competitors are not going to lay it out all out on the table like that. I think they're going to help each other. I think that it's going to be a teachable moment for all three, but I still believe that they all had something in reserve when you went through those processes. I think that when you're talking about this game this week, there is certain knowledge that you have. You just know guys and their tendencies and what they can do and what they can't do. I don't think there are going to be a whole lot of surprises when it comes to the overall skill set, but I don't think that it's going to be, we're going to see anything that's going to blow any one of us out of the water when it comes to something like that.
Naysayers about the Jets and specifically their top-ranked defense are going to say, look at the competition. They just faced Kirk Cousins and the Washington Redskins. They faced the Dolphins, who couldn't get anything going in London against the Jets and lost that game. They faced the Eagles, who were, they won Monday night against the Giants, but their offense still looks like it's in caveman era. It's really, really not on the same wavelength as everybody else in the NFL. It looks very much far behind. How good is this Jets defense? Well, I look at it like this, Chris. I take a look at what the Jets were able to do last year with their defensive front seven, hold the Patriots to 27 points here at Gillette on that rainy Thursday night, and then the 17-16 nail-biter late in the season, and then you add to it what they have in the secondary. That's, I think, the better barometer of what this Jets defense is really all about and can be on Sunday.
These two teams, this is going to be their toughest test on both sides of the ball over the course of the first 5 games. You look at the Patriots' schedule, they've had some challenges along the way. They've also had some blowouts along the way. I think when you look at the Jets' schedule, it's a lot of the same stuff. It's not the most overwhelming group of opponents. Both teams are going to get a real test on both sides of the ball on Sunday afternoon. I think it's going to be fascinating for both sides. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they respond. I think how the Jets respond is going to tell us a lot about their ability to hang in AFC East for the rest of the year. I don't think they're going to be able to challenge the Patriots long-term as it relates to 2015, but I think if you're the Jets, you come in here and you're competitive, you can point toward an 8-8, 9-7 season. I think you could be happy with that result.
All right, it's always dangerous to do what I'm about to do, but reading into the body language of Bill Belichick here on Wednesday morning, he did not seem chipper. He was a little bit late to the podium. He looked a little preoccupied, and I think part of that is, hey, look, this is a serious opponent we have this week. There's a lot on the line. It's first place in the AFC East, and we have a running game that's coming into town and led by Chris Ivory that's top ranked in the NFL. Everybody's talking about their defense, and rightfully so, but Chris Ivory and that running game is better than anybody else in the league, and Belichick has to come up with a way to really fire up a defensive line to stop them.
There are a lot of changes on this Jets roster across the board, personnel, scheme, style, approach. When it comes to the offensive side of the ball, everything old is new again. They still love to run. They still love to play physical football, sound football. They're not going to beat you through the air an awful lot. They're going to take their shots downfield, but more often than not, it's going to be a steady, consistent run game, which is very, very interesting because they don't have an overwhelming offensive line, but they find ways to get it done on the ground. They found ways to get it done on the ground over the course of the first 5 games. As you mentioned, Chris Ivory been really stout up front. They've been able to move the chains consistently with that running game. It's going to pose a great challenge to the New England defense. Now, you got to put some of these numbers in context, but you look at the New England defense, they've struggled a little bit when it comes to stopping the run. We saw it last week against Indianapolis and Frank Gore. If I'm the Jets, I come in here, I try and run the ball, I try and control the clock, and then I take my chances that way.
All right, some news here at Gillette Stadium, Chris. I know you wrote about this in a nice column on weei.com. All of your columns are always nice.
Thank you, my friend.
But Brandon LaFell is getting ready to come off the PUP. Bill Belichick talked about him this morning, Wednesday morning, talking about how he's been really a good influence around some of the teammates like Keyshawn Martin, not getting in the way, but just doing enough to kind of get the feel of game day and the Saturday night back for himself. And he was back on the field here on Wednesday afternoon, participating in practice. What do you make of Brandon LaFell practicing this week? Should we expect him this Sunday or not?
Well, I think that from a practical perspective, that starts the clock. You have a 21-day window to decide if you're going to activate the player or you're going to keep him on PUP the rest of the year. I think the fact that they activated him relatively immediately, I think it's a good sign. I also think it's a good sign that they took him on the road for those 2 road games. They don't take tourists. That's what they always say.
Sure don't.
They don't take tourists. They take guys who are going to play or who are close to playing. So I think that we need to manage our expectations around him a little bit. I think it's going to take time for him to get up to speed. Right. You have to remember, this is a guy who was in a walking boot over the course of the spring, didn't participate in the spring workouts, the summer workouts, so it's going to take him a few weeks to get to where he needs to be physically. I don't think he's going to play this week. If he does play, I don't think he's going to have a sizable impact. I think you look toward 2-3 weeks down the road, that Washington game, that Miami game, that's when I think you can start to pinpoint Brandon LaFell as a potential contributor in this offense.
Marcus Cannon and Jabal Sheard, one offense, one defensive player, not practicing here on Wednesday as Ryan Hannibal was out at practice. What do you make of both of those situations?
Well, I think the Cannon one has to be taken very delicately because, as we've talked about before, you don't have a lot of depth at tackle. And I think that you can kind of mix and match a little bit, and you can do some things, and you have some flexibility with a guy like Mike Williams. So I thought it was interesting that Bill reminded us in the press conference, look, he played 30, 40 snaps at tackle in the preseason against the Jets for the Lions. I think that's a way of kind of dropping a hint and say, look, don't be surprised if you see him out there on Sunday. You have some options on the practice squad. You can move some guys around. So I think that it's going to be really difficult, and I think it's going to be really difficult to tell. But I think right now, as it stands, I think he plays. Sheard is an interesting situation. Ankle, yeah, and he is a guy who I think started the year as a situational player, as a situational pass rusher, but he's developed into more than that now over the course of the first 5 games. You can move some guys around. You can kind of camouflage, and I think a lot of his potential return, and we talked about this in the podcast, might be tied to whether or not Dante Hightower is available, and so you can move some of those guys around. You can move Ninkovich a little bit. You can move Hightower a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes up. You do have some options in both those cases when it comes to backups.
I think it's safe to assume that you feel this is going to be a slugfest on Sunday. What happens?
Yeah, I do. I think this is going to be a really good, tight, physical football game. I think, however, the Patriots have enough advantages at really the important positions, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, particularly in the passing game. I think New England's going to have just enough to win this thing. I think I'm going to pick this one, New England 27-28, and the Jets 20 or 21.
All right. I would like to really thank Chris Price for toughing it out here. I know you are under the weather, yes, battling in the elements. As we said, you're questionable at least for the rest of the week. But I know
limited participant today.
I know you will be ready and fully participating on Sunday as we bring you full coverage here inside Gillette Stadium. Myself, Christopher Price, and of course Ryan Hannibal, all the coverage on WEEI.com. Inside Gillette Stadium with an ailing Christopher Price, I'm Mike Petraglia, WEEI.com.